This story comes from Worcester County, Massachusetts. And the writer is anonymous, so we will call her Elaine, and her husband, Gary. Back in 2004, Elaine and Gary were given 3 of their grandchildren to raise. The children were boys aged 1.5, 3, and 4.5 years old. And the boys were followed a few months later by a sister, a newborn who was also given to Elaine and Gary to raise. So all of a sudden, after having raised their own children, they find themselves new parents once again. And they lived in a small town in New England. So small that you could step out onto the front yard and you could see the police department, the fire department, and the post office. Her grandmother and father were born in that town, and Elaine lived there for 6 decades. It's the kind of place where if you need some vegetables for supper, you go to your neighbor's garden, pull what you need, and leave the money on the porch. And they lived on Main Street, but they were surrounded by a lot of forested area. 3 rivers run through that town, and they had a huge field behind their house. There were many fields in the town, and many farmers too, and in the neighboring towns. They were very New England type towns, small and comfy and cozy. When the children first come to live with them, both Elaine and Gary have jobs. He works at a transit company in a neighboring town, and she is a paralegal. And Elaine's job is a 4-hour commute. 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. She's gone from the house for 12 hours a day at a minimum. And she often works weekends too. So Gary takes a leave of absence from his job and stays home with the kids for 2.5 years. And when he does return to work, he works the night shift so he can be home with the kids during the day. And he does his best with the kids while Elaine's gone at work. And given the circumstances, he does a pretty good job. And one day after work, when the youngest 2 kids are 6 and 4, Elaine comes home and finds the house is a total mess. Supper hasn't been made, and the kids come running to her with some story about a big gorilla that was running through the yard that day. The 2 youngest tell her that during the afternoon, they saw a big gorilla running along the street in front of their house, and it was super fast. And then the big gorilla jumped their picket fence and ran in their yard. And the children said they had their noses pressed up against the window, and that the big gorilla came to the window and growled at them and pushed its paws against the window. And they said they'd tried to wake up Gary, but he'd fallen asleep on the couch and would not wake up. The big gorilla then ran into the backyard, where it busted some car windows and threw some garbage cans around. And Elaine doesn't disbelieve the children. She's just far too exhausted to deal with it at the moment. So she responds with her standard, "That's nice" comment, which she uses any time there's something that she just can't handle right now. And she does recall reading the newspaper a few days later where police were warning local residents of some vehicle damage and vandalism that was going on. But she doesn't give it any further thought. Elaine doesn't give it any further thought, even though years prior to the gorilla incident, she had seen a huge wolf dead on the side of the road, presumably hit by a car. It is not a coyote or a coy dog that they also have in the area. She had seen pictures of wolves, and this one was immense. And Elaine had personally seen coy dogs out on the trail while she was riding her horse. And the wolf body was gone the next day, and there was no mention of it by any authorities or in the newspaper. And she thought that was kind of unusual. I mean, did they have wolves in the area? Because that might be kind of newsworthy. Did anybody else see this wolf? Obviously somebody had, because the body was gone the next day. Elaine doesn't give it any further thought. Even though years before the children came, she and Gary had both seen very large canine footprints around their house. They mentioned those prints to a friend of theirs who's an animal control officer in a neighboring town. But he didn't seem real surprised by their find, and they never discussed it anymore. Elaine doesn't give the big gorilla story any further thought. Even though about the same time they saw the big dog prints in their backyard, their cats had started to go missing. She found one of their cats, Peter, the best hunter in town, up on their neighbor's third-story roof. She called to Peter, but no luck. Elaine then managed to get in the house and go up to the second floor. And she climbed out onto the second floor porch with a wash basket, where she raised it above her head and up to the gutters of the house. And Peter obligingly dropped in. Thankfully, they managed to save their cat. One of their friends even asked, "What was Peter doing up on the roof? He's not afraid of anything." But Elaine is still not connecting the dots. Back to the big gorilla story. When the children get a little older, they move to North Carolina. It's in North Carolina where the kids are near to teen years, where Elaine stumbles across a Dogman Encounters program on YouTube, and she listens intently to the stories featured on those programs. And one day, while she's driving down the street, the dots all connect in her head. The idea jolts her and her brain awake. "Wait a minute," she says. "Did they say big gorilla and something very fast when they told me that gorilla story? Did the children have an encounter with something all those years back?" So Elaine immediately talks to the 12-year-old and the 14-year-old separately. "Do you remember the time you told me about the big gorilla?" And the 12-year-old energetically tells her everything that she can remember about that day. The animal was very large and very fast. It had black hair and a long bushy tail. It growled. It had paws with fingers, and it stood up and pushed on the window with those paws. It ran very fast and had jumped over the fence. Then it ran into the backyard, breaking things and making a lot of noise. And the 12-year-old said it didn't really have the face of a gorilla or a monkey, but she couldn't tell anything more about the face because of the hair. So then Elaine asked the 14-year-old, who just shivers. He says he will never forget that thing coming into their yard. He remembers it as if it were yesterday. He, too, remembers the swiftness of the creature, the black hair on it, how it jumped the fence and was running amok between the front yard and the backyard. He says he didn't know what it was back then, and he still doesn't know now, and hopes he never sees something like that again. The children now know about Bigfoot and Dogman and cryptids. They didn't know when they saw the big gorilla, though, and neither did Elaine. They've all received an education since then, and they're aware that dogmen don't always stay in the forests, that they are often seen in neighborhoods. And perhaps, just perhaps, the creature that Elaine's children saw all those years ago is just that, a dogman in a small New England town.